Here, there you go. This is one of the first cameras, or at least the first camera that is similar to the cameras we have now. Nowadays, phones have almost 10 camera lenses, and the camera is one of the most relevant features for people in smartphones these days. The first device able to reproduce and capture an image was invented in 1816 by Joseph Nisfor and was called the heliograph. We take these devices for granted now, but what about we stop and think how they work on the inside? Now we have these cameras on our phones. We worry so much about how many pixels they have or how many cameras our smartphones have. Still, we don't really know how they function. Maybe people who like photography have a DSLR camera, but these days people don't know much about cameras. We just use our phone cameras. So how does a camera work? The first camera was essentially a room with a small hole on one side wall. Light would pass through that hole, and since it's reflected in straight lines, the image would be projected on the opposite wall, upside down. Given the limited light capturing capability of the initial camera, it required 8 hours to capture a sole photograph, resulting in a rather blurry image. Now, how do we manage to capture crisp images within milliseconds today? Let's talk about camera lenses. As light interacts with objects, it not only bounces off them, but can also traverse through them. But during this, it tends to alter its direction. This is where a camera lens comes into play. By utilizing glass, it collects all the light rays in motion, easily redirecting them to converge at a single point, so it forms a sharp and clear image. To be able to open and close this entry of light, we also need a shutter, which makes this popular noise that camera makes. Now, the noise that your phone makes when taking a picture is just a sound effect. When all of those light rays meet on a digital camera, sensor, or a piece of film, they combine to form a sharp image. The image will appear fuzzy or out of focus if the light does not meet at the correct place. The ability of camera lenses to zoom in is also affected by distance. Objects appear closer when the front piece of glass travels away from the camera sensor. For example, using a 300mm lens, it takes 300mm for light to be directed back into a sharp spot on the camera sensor. A 300mm lens is a telephoto lens, or one that can bring distant objects closer. So how exactly do digital cameras work? While the lens's procedures and terminology are the same, the sensor of a digital camera is more similar to a solar panel than a strip of film. Each sensor has millions of red, green, and blue pixels, megapixels. When light strikes a pixel, the sensor converts into energy. Putting the information from all the pixels together, the computer can approximate the shapes and colors in the scene. If each pixel is gathering light information, then camera sensors with more megapixels can capture more detail. That's why manufacturers often advertise a camera's megapixel. While that's true to some extent, the size of the sensor is also important. Larger sensors will gather more light, making them better performance for low light scenes. Packing lots of megapixels into a small sensor actually makes the image quality worse, because those individual pixels are too small. Okay, so now we should enter the world of RGB. By the way, all these explanations also work for smartphone cameras, or at least they are very similar in their concepts. So what is RGB? I've heard these letters but never really understood what they mean. In a nutshell, RGB, which stands for red, green, and blue channels, is one of the color profiles you want to use when choosing colors for a design. All that you see on your screens are based on the red, green, and blue shades. The other color profile, CMYK, which refers to cyan, magenta, yellow, and black. The RGB colors are produced by light, which varies in intensity to make up a broad range of colors. With this, you can create any color in the rainbow, as well as grays, whites, and blacks. But how only 3 colors can capture all the spectrum of colors we need? It is because it uses those 3 colors but also mixes them in ways that we need. When mixing and playing with those combinations of colors, the image can have all the colors our eyes see. Talking about eyes, surprisingly, cameras were inspired by our vision. Our eyes are pretty similar to cameras. Here are the similarities. Both have lenses to focus light and sensors to capture it. The camera lens moves to stay focused on an object. Your eyes changing shape instead. The human eye is a super big device. Our eyes easily adjust to make clear images when the objects are too far or too near in dark or bright conditions. The right adjustments must be made in the camera to take amazing pictures. Between the human eye, which procedures pictures, and the camera, there are several similarities. In both the human eye and cameras, clear images are created by focusing light onto a light detecting surface. In the human eye, the cornea and lens play this role, adjusting the lens shape to maintain focus as the object's distance changes. Similarly, cameras use lenses to capture image at their focal points. The angle of view, representing the lens field of vision, varies with the focal length. Shorter focal lengths result in wider angles. Different lenses, based on their focal lengths, provide varied perspectives when capturing the same object from the same distance. Memory is crucial for images to have value, whether personal or societal. While not everything from the past can be remembered, a photo has the power to make things unforgettable. The artist's advantage lies in their ability to memorize details like angles, distances, and light intensity. The act of seeing involves using visual memory effectively. This applies not only to photography, but also to drawing and graphic design. The relationship between a camera and the human eye is explored, highlighting the importance of visual memory in the creative process. In essence, seeing requires more than just looking. It involves experience, memorization, and understanding of visual content. Now, let's take a look at the relationship between smartphone cameras and DSLR cameras. Cameras can take any type of lens. You just have to change it or move it. Instead, phones, for convenience, need to have multiple lenses to achieve this. For example, the new iPhone 15 has 3 cameras and 3 different lenses. It would be too inconvenient for the users to carry different lenses every single time they want to take a picture. So when you open the camera up, when you see the ultra wide mode, it will use the other lens. And finally, when you see the 1x, it will use the main camera. The 5x optical zoom is equivalent to a 100mm telephoto lens, which is a great focal length for portraits and a lens that can be used in ways that just didn't work with 3x zoom. The 5x lens is much more of a go-to option for just everyday shots, especially when people and pets are involved. It has excellent background blur that pairs well with the portrait feature. Now, of course, the lenses of DSLRs are usually superior to those on phone cameras. They are often faster, meaning they have a wider aperture, and they can produce sharper images. DSLR's cameras have more manual control as well. The camera sensors are a lot larger and have a much higher dynamic range. You can also shoot on RAW, which will help you in the future with editing.